Good morning, Asia. Good evening, America. You're watching World DNA with me, Jyotsna Kumar.
And I'm Diksha Bisla, and coming up on the show today, the United States has acknowledged that one of its aircraft has crashed in western Iraq. And this is amid the country's joint military offensive with Israel against Iran. There hasn't been any immediate indication of whether there were fatalities or survivors. We're going to get you all the details on the show today. Stay tuned.
Well, also on the show, in his first message since assuming office, new leader of Iran, Mojtaba Khamenei, has vowed to continue strikes against U.S. military bases in the region and maintain the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. He has also warned of opening new fronts of war against the United States and Israel. We'll get you all the details on that. Let's begin with the headlines first.
Prime Minister Modi speaks to Iranian President Pezeshkian, expressing deep concern over escalating conflict in West Asia, urges dialogue and diplomacy, and raises safety of Indian nationals and disrupted fuel shipments.
U.S. Central Command confirms an American aerial refueling plane crashes in western Iraq, saying the crash is not due to hostile or friendly fire. Iran's military claims an allied group in Iraq shot it down, killing the crew.
And we're doing what has to be done, should have been done during a 47-year period. They really are a nation of terror and hate, and they're paying a big price right now.
U.S. President Donald Trump says the war with Iran is moving rapidly and praises the strength of U.S. military while condemning Iran as a nation of terror paying a high price.
French President Macron confirms a French soldier killed in drone attack in Iraq's Kurdistan region, marking France's first military death in the West Asia conflict. Several other soldiers wounded in Erbil attack.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu says joint U.S.-Israeli campaign is crushing Iran and Hezbollah, urges Iranian to rise against Islamic Republic after Iran's new leader. Mojtaba Khamenei vows to avenge Iranians who were killed in the conflict.
Israel says Iran launched a new wave of missiles towards the country, prompting warnings for residents in affected areas to move to shelters, while the military activates air defense systems to intercept incoming threat.
Saudi Arabia says its forces intercept and destroyed dozens of drones that entered its airspace. 12 drones shot down, while 2 additional waves of 9 and 7 drones also intercepted in separate incidents.
Exiled Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi criticizes Iran's new leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, calling the regime unchangeable, violent and repressive, urges international community to help end the regime and back Iranian people.
The dollar stays strong as Middle East tensions and rising oil prices drive safe haven demand. The euro weakens and markets eye next week's Federal Reserve and European Central Bank meetings for clues on interest rates.
all boats. They have some missiles, but not very many. I think we're in very good shape.
This is a war imposed on us. Transportation of oil has been slowed down because of the attacks and aggression made by Israelis and Americans against us.
Well, it is the 14th day of the war in West Asia, and Iran's new leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, has addressed the world.
Of course, vowing that the country will avenge the blood of its martyrs, and he has warned neighbors to close all U.S. bases on their territory. Let's quickly take a look at the latest developments from the region. Now, Iran's new leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, whose father and other family members were killed in the opening strikes of the war, has vowed to avenge the Iranian casualties in the conflict against the United States and Israel. He has ordered the Strait of Hormuz, the crucial oil shipping lane, will remain closed.
Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Saeed Khatibzadeh has asserted that the country is not laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz. Trump said U.S. forces had struck 28 Iranian mine-laying vessels in the waterway. The U.S. military has clarified that it is not ready to escort tankers through the critical waterway because all its assets are focused on striking Iran.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump told reporters that the war against Iran was moving very rapidly. He said that U.S. military is unsurpassed but did not respond to the latest comments from Iran's new leader. While Trump added that Iran is a nation of terror and hate and that they're paying a big price right now.
Well, meanwhile, the Israeli military has said that it has targeted checkpoints set up in Tehran by the besieged paramilitary force of Iran's Revolutionary Guards. The IDF says these attacks on roadblocks and operatives took place over the past one day. According to reports, Revolutionary Guard forces have set up checkpoints across the Iranian capital in a bid to assert control amid the ongoing U.S.-Israeli strikes.
Well, the war is creating the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. And this is Iran's chokehold on regional supply forces Gulf producers to slash production. The International Energy Agency said. An IEA market report said that crude oil production was currently down by at least 8 million barrels per day. Well, U.S. President Donald Trump told reporters that the war against Iran was moving very rapidly.
And this as Iran's new leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, has addressed the world, vowing that the country will avenge the blood of its martyrs. Well, Trump said that U.S. military is unsurpassed but did not respond to the latest comments from Iran's new leader. Trump added that Iran is a nation of terror and hate, suggesting that they were paying a big price.
Situation with Iran is moving along very rapidly. It's doing very well. Our military is unsurpassed. There's never been anything like it. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. And we're doing what has to be done. Should have been done during a 47-year period. Could have been done by a lot of different people. They chose not to do it. But they really are a nation of terror and hate. And they're paying a big price right now.
Trump has given mixed signals in recent days about the progress of the war, saying that U.S. had won against Iran and that it could end very soon, but also insisting on the need to fight on. He did not directly respond to comments made by Iran's new leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, vowing revenge and saying that Iran must keep a chokehold on the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, on the other hand, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has said that the cost of Iran war was not something to worry about. His comments came as Pentagon reported that U.S. spent $11.3 billion in the first week of the war. In a Sky News interview, Bessent outright rejected the prospect that a specific price point would prompt President Trump to consider the conflict unaffordable.
again, that 11 billion is a lot of money, but we have cushions built in, and it's not something that we have to worry about over this horizon.
In the meantime, U.S. Central Command has said that a KC-135 refueling aircraft crashed in western Iraq. This was during Operation Epic Fury. Now, CENTCOM said that the incident involved another aircraft and took place in a friendly airspace. It explained that the crash was not due to hostile fire or friendly fire, and that the second aircraft was able to land safely. CENTCOM said that the rescue efforts were on to recover the crew of the aircraft, although their condition remains unknown.
Now, the crash marks the fourth U.S. aircraft lost in Iran war after 3 F-15s were shot down by friendly fire over Kuwait. Well, contrary to this, Iran's military has taken responsibility, suggesting that an allied group in Iraq had downed the aircraft with a missile, killing all its crew.
In a post on X, the Speaker of Iran's parliament, MB Ghalibaf, said that American families deserve to know why Trump was sacrificing their sons and daughters to advance Netanyahu's expansionist delusions.
All right, to discuss more from Washington, D.C., we're now being joined live by Asha Castleberry, who is a U.S. national security and foreign policy expert. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast today. Let's begin with what President Donald Trump has said, that he said that the war against Iran is moving very rapidly. On the other hand, the new leader of Iran, Mojtaba Khamenei, has said that he has vowed a new opening of a new fronts of the war. Do you think that the move is actually moving to another phase and it's expanding and not what Trump had said about it ending soon?
I do think it's moving to another phase. As long as we see restrictions in the Strait of Hormuz, I know there was some vessel movement, but as long as there's restriction that continues there to impact oil pricing, which is also a strategic location for operations, that's still going to be that tells us a lot in terms of where this new phase of this war is heading to. And as long as we don't really see diplomacy happening or being the leading element in the end of this war, it seems like it's going to continue in what we're seeing right now.
Right, and having said that, we understand that the Strait of Hormuz has now become this major flashpoint in the conflict. And with the economic and, of course, the humanitarian toll rising by the day, do you think Trump would be persuaded to, in fact, scale back this military campaign given the pressure that is coming from his own base and, of course, also the opposition? Or are we seeing a more protracted war, going ahead?
Well, there's two factors to take into account. One, the domestic pressure, like you said, especially if the oil pricing continues to go up. And knowing that we have an existing affordability crisis, the American people really can't handle what's happening right now, even if it's short term. And also, too, if the casualty rate goes up in terms of number of troops or local civilians, especially Americans, that is also a factor to take into account on whether the current administration will stay engaged.
And that being said, of course, because you mentioned how, of course, we'll have to take a reaction of what Americans are feeling at this point. But according to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, they can go on, and there is no reason, or there is no reason to stop the war as of now. How do you take a look at his comments at the moment?
Well, it's definitely not reflective of a national consensus involved in this war. There's still a lot of debate on whether this war is war of choice or it's responding to an imminent threat regarding our national security. Also, another factor to take into account on whether to look at the justification of it is the sleeper cells that's now a problem within the United States. And so that's going to definitely be one of the determinants when it comes to American polling, public opinion about this war.
And because you mentioned sleeper cells, we also have some reports there were assailants that had smashed through the doors of a synagogue in Michigan. There has been a shooting in Virginia where the FBI identified this gunman to have previously been in jail for trying to support Islamic State group. Then we know of these two teens who were earlier charged over Islamic State-inspired attack outside New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani. Do you think that those attacks will be rising and Trump will consider maybe holding back on these attacks when such attacks happen in U.S. itself?
Yes, and even if President Trump ends this war today, those attacks are still going to likely happen as a result of what has developed from this war, especially when it comes to taking out Iranian leadership. They are on a major vengeance. They want to continue to go on. They're culturally very determined. So you will see where, when it comes to domestic security, America will be on high alert for quite some time, even if the war continues or if it ends.
Right, and while we don't see any diplomatic off-ramp in the short term, at least inside, and given the deep mistrust on both the sides here, and of course because of how Tehran is saying that it was in the middle of negotiations and it was willing to make concessions when the US striked it this time and also in June last year, do you think there is going to be a situation perhaps in the long term where the US and Iran are forced back to the negotiating table despite this deep mistrust on both sides?
Yes, I do. I do think they'll come to the table because someone on one or the other side, and I think most likely will be Iran, will run out in terms of munitions, capabilities. One side's going to outperform than the other when it comes to ongoing attacks through its missiles or munitions. So we will see in terms of the endurance of it. I don't think Iran really has the endurance to outperform United States and Israel. And if that day does come, that may pressure Iran to come back to the table to speak with the United States.
While that might be the case, we also understand that this has also been pegged as, a race against time, where we understand that the US might have superior firepower, but Iran has also created this high endurance model where it can sustain, for a longer period of time. And given this asymmetrical model in place, do you think there's a chance that Iran would be able to, would be willing to actually concede first, given that US is facing a lot of pressure internally and from its allies, as we've just discussed? And I think the question here could also be how long can US sustain this kind of pressure and keep going in a capacity which it's operating at right now?
United States can definitely outperform Iran in terms of endurance, but based on what we've seen historically, especially with Iran engaging with Israel, many of these conflicts turn to 7 days or 10-day or 12-day wars, which is reflective of their endurance. So I don't think they'll outperform the United States. However, I do think they'll go longer than 12 days because of the fact that they not only have invested a lot in their stockpiling, but also they have enablers like Russia, security assistance, possibly security assistance from the Chinese, North Korea, and others to help give them the battlefield confidence by investing more in their capabilities to stay engaged. And we just saw that recently with Russia as far as providing intelligence to Iran.
And also, just to add to, of course, my colleague's question, because you mentioned that, yes, America can go on, but it's not just a choice of how much money does or armory or ammunition does U.S. have. It's also about how much global disruption is being caused as of for now. We know that the industries, it's not just trade, it's aviation, logistics, agriculture, and a lot of countries are being involved in this point. At what point will, all these regional countries now, is there a possibility that these regional countries will try and, of course, pressure Trump into stopping this, because everyone is being impacted at this point. It's not just Israel, US, or Iran.
Well, what you'll see is initially is that more and more will become vocal in the Security Council to pressure the United States and other key actors of de-escalatory ceasefire and use maximal diplomacy as far as addressing this issue. But what also you have to take into account is where Russia and China plays a part in as far as being very vocal in these issues. So if Russia and China becomes part of the rest of the party of de-escalation, ceasefire, come to the table, and in United States and Israel alone, there's a possibility that that you'll see that there's more international pressure that that will make a difference here. But I really don't think it will. As far as the international pressure, I think the one main factor that will determine as far as a potential de-escalation and ceasefire and come to the table is based on the amount of destruction that comes out of the tit for tat between both parties and who runs out of what in terms of critical capabilities.
Let's also go back to what Moshtaba Khamenei has said about this opening new fronts of war. We know that Hezbollah has been attacking. They have been at war with Israel. But we also have Houthis who have not really acted as of now. Do you think their involvement could happen anytime soon, if at all? Because you mentioned that Iran could run out of ammunition faster than U.S. or Israel, but we haven't seen Houthi react as of now. Do you think that's a possibility, and how kind of effect will that have on the phase of the war?
Of course, I mean, it's already spreading everywhere regionally, so why not? They'll eventually join the fight, and Iran has done a really good job in terms of the level of sophistication in orchestrating its malign activities throughout the MENA region. So that is a possibility. It's almost as if it's inevitable that they will join if this war continues.
Right, of course, this is an evolving situation. We'll have to see how the variables fall in place. But for now, thank you so much, Asha, for joining us on the broadcast and sharing your perspective with us.
Thank you.
Well, we have some breaking news coming in from Afghanistan. Kabul police have said that Pakistan's strike has killed 4 people in the Afghan capital.
And the Afghan government says that Pakistan has carried out fresh strikes on Kabul and several other provinces. Taliban government spokesman Sabiullah Mujahid says in a post on X that Kabul, Kandahar, Paktika and some other areas have been targeted.
Of course, this is breaking news coming in from Afghanistan, another conflict in that region. Kabul police have said that Pakistan's strike has killed 4 people in Afghan capital. The Afghan government says that Pakistan had carried out fresh strikes on Kabul and several other provinces. And the Taliban government spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid have posted on X, and he has said that Kabul, Kandahar, Paktika and some other areas have been targeted in this strike where 4 people have been killed.
Well, the Israeli military has claimed that it struck Hezbollah command posts in Beirut and southern Lebanon in multiple waves of attack.
And this is shortly after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Beirut must restrain the armed group or Israel will act on its own.
Renewed strikes can be seen hitting infrastructures in Beirut, which continues to reel under Israeli attack, with Israeli strikes killing nearly 700 people, according to Lebanese authorities. And Israel says strikes are in retaliation to Hezbollah launching heavy rocket and drone attack overnight.
Well, in a press conference, Netanyahu warned if Lebanese government did not disarm Hezbollah, Israel would do the job on the ground, adding Hezbollah will pay a heavy price for targeting Israel.
How will we do it? On the ground, with the ground, and other things. I am not going to go into detail here, but I assure you that we, as I said, will exact a very heavy price from Hezbollah, and it is better for the Lebanese government to precede us and participate in this process. If it does not do it, we will have no choice but to do it our own way.
Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, too, has threatened to take territory in Lebanon as IDF expands its Lebanon offensive. Israel's military chief said the operation in Lebanon would not be short.
Well, the conflict between U.S., Israel, and Iran is rapidly spreading across the Gulf region, reigniting fighting between Israel and Hezbollah after Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was assassinated and joined U.S.-Israeli strikes on Tehran.
Meanwhile, Netanyahu also issued a veiled threat to kill Iran's new leader, adding that as joint strikes are crushing Iran, toppling the regime remains a top goal.
We are crushing the nuclear infrastructure of Iran, the missile and launcher array, the repression headquarters, the regime's centers of power, and many more targets. At the same time, we are working to advance another objective, to create the conditions for the Iranian people so that they can remove the cruel, tyrannical regime that has oppressed it for nearly half a century.
Netanyahu said that Iran was no longer the same after nearly 2 weeks of U.S.-Israeli airstrikes, adding that Tehran had suffered major blows to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and the besieged paramilitary force.
Now, on the other hand, Lebanese Foreign Minister Youssef Raghi has summoned an Iranian diplomat for a meeting after Iran's Revolutionary Guards claimed responsibility for a coordinated missile attack with Hezbollah on Israel.
All right, time for a quick short break on World DNA. Coming up, as West Asia war continues to escalate, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has now held a telephonic conversation with Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian and has also expressed deeper concern over the situation. We'll get you all the details on that and more on the other side on World DNA. Keep watching WION for this one.
In an ever-changing, fast-paced world, identifying the pulse of global happenings is important. Because it is the pulse that truly measures the real nature of world events. It monitors the shifting geopolitical landscapes and anticipates what lies ahead. At WION World Pulse 2026, we tap into the heartbeat of events that matter to you and to the world. 7 pulsating themes, 100 plus thought leaders, 1 dynamic platform, WION World Pulse. The rhythm of the new world order.
It's about the support that those terrorist groups.
LTT has been wiped out. Afghanistan would expect India.
This Hafiz Saeed issue.
Deepest disappointment and concern.
दुनिया पहले 2 कैंप में 2 खेमे में
Müslüman düşmanlığı yapmaya başladı.
To political activists.
So long as my country.
From the conversations that mattered to capturing the pulse for the future.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, the West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's impact.
Thank you so much for staying with us. You're watching Beyond World is One and this is World DNA with me, Jyotsna Kumar, my colleague Diksha Bisla. Let's begin with the headlines.
Prime Minister Modi speaks to Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, expressing deep concern over escalating conflict in West Asia, urges dialogue and diplomacy, and raises safety of Indian nationals and the disrupted fuel shipments.
The U.S. Central Command confirms an American aerial refueling plane crashes in western Iraq, saying the crash is not due to hostile or friendly fire. Iran's military claims an allied group in Iraq shot it down, killing the crew.
And we're doing what has to be done, should have been done during a 47-year period. They really are a nation of terror and hate, and they're paying a big price right now.
US President Donald Trump says the war with Iran is moving rapidly and praises the strength of the US military while condemning Iran as a nation of terror while paying a higher price.
French President Emmanuel Macron confirms a French soldier killed in drone attack in Iraq's Kurdistan region, marking France's first military death in the West Asia conflict. Several other soldiers wounded in Edward attack.
Israel says Iran launched a new wave of missiles towards the country, prompting warnings from residents in affected areas to move to shelters, while the military activates air defense systems to intercept incoming threat.
Saudi Arabia says its forces intercept and destroy dozens of drones that entered its airspace. 12 drones shot down, while 2 additional waves of 9 and 7 drones were also intercepted in separate incidents.
Exiled Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi criticizes Iran's new leader Mujtaba Khamenei, calling the regime unchangeable, violent and repressive. Urges international community to help end the regime and back the Iranian people.
Pakistani strikes kill 4 people in Kabul, with the Afghan government reporting fresh attacks on Kabul and several provinces. Taliban spokesperson confirms Kabul, Kandahar, Paktia and Paktika areas targeted in the strikes.
The US issues a 30-day license allowing countries to buy Russian oil and petroleum products stranded at sea. The temporary move aims to stabilize global energy markets and curb the soaring oil prices triggered by the Iran conflict and applies to cargoes which are loaded before March 12th. Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has held a telephonic conversation with Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian.
Well, in a post on social media, ex-PM Modi said he discussed the serious situation in the region with Pezeshkian and expressed deep concern over the escalation of tensions and the loss of civilian lives as well as damage to civilian infrastructure.
He said the safety and security of Indian nationals, along with the need for unhindered transit of goods and energy, remains India's top priorities. The conversation comes at a time when the war in West Asia has entered its 13th day, with global energy markets facing uncertainty following the closure of the Strait of Hormuz.
Earlier on Thursday, the Indian Prime Minister had said that India is taking steps to safeguard its energy security in view of the global fuel crisis triggered by US-Israel war in Iran. To minimize the impact of the disruptions, PM Modi assured that the government remains focused on diversifying India's sources of energy.
बीते दिनों दुनिया के कई देशों के शीर्ष नेताओं से मेरी इसको लेकर बातचीत हुई है। सप्लाई चेन में जो बाधाएं आई हैं, उससे हम कैसे पार पाएं, इसके लिए भी निरंतर प्रयास चल रहे हैं। साथियों, भारत के तेज विकास के लिए अलग अलग एनर्जी सोर्सेज को बढ़ावा देना निरंतर जरूरी रहा है और इसको मजबूत करने के लिए हमने 2 स्तरों पर एक साथ काम किया है।
And for more on this, our Assistant Editor for Foreign Affairs, Siddhant Sibbal, has sent us this report. Take a look.
Key conversation between the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Iranian President on Thursday, in which the Indian Prime Minister raised the issue of unhindered access of energy and goods and also safety of Indian nationals. The Iranian side, of course, briefed about the current situation in his country. India, of course, focused on dialogue and diplomacy. In fact, the Iranian leader is the 9th leader the Indian Prime Minister has spoken when it comes to the West Asian region since the war started on 28th of February. But the conversation will be seen significant at a time when the situation remains tense in the region, and it has been having cascading impact on energy prices, not only globally, but of course here in India as well. But clearly, India will be hoping that there is an early conclusion of the war in West Asia, given the ramification it has on India, and the conversation the Indian Prime Minister has with the West Asian leaders, of course, is something that takes into account Indian interest. Siddhant Sibbal for WION.
Right, oil supply disruptions are continuing to hamper operations of several industries, including aviation, logistics, agriculture, and more.
Now, one such stream in the manufacturing hub is the glass industry, with a 24/7 furnace at the heart of its survival. But the West Asia war chokes the Strait of Hormuz. These fires are under threat. Take a look at this next report for more details.
Glassmaking is one of the most energy-intensive processes. With the Indian government invoking the Essential Commodities Act on March 10th, natural gas supply for industrial use has been slashed to 80% to prioritize households. For an industry where even a 30-minute fuel outage can cause a furnace to crack and lead to losses worth crores, the clock is ticking. Hindustan National Gas and Industries, which is a manufacturer specializing in container glass, says it won't be able to continue operations beyond a week if LPG supply is not restored at full capacity.
The situation persists for next 7, 8, 10 days. We will be running out of the stock that we have, and then we will have no option but to scale down or suspend the manufacturing, which will impact key industries like pharmaceutical, food and beverages, etc., etc. I feel the only thing is government needs to prioritize industries which needs to operate. The industries like it is a 24/7 industries, and take cognizance of our representation. Otherwise, it will be a massive disruption in the supply chain.
Other players in the industry are also feeling the heat. Borosil Limited has temporarily suspended production at its borosilicate glassware plant in Jaipur due to restriction in LPG supplies. Its opalware manufacturing plant in Jaipur is also operating at lower capacity. The supply crisis has given rise to an interesting trend. Borosil says its induction cookware sales have spiked due to concerns over higher gas prices and possible LPG shortages. Analysts say March sales will be largely unaffected for big players in the gas industry. However, if the war prolongs over a month, they will have to turn off furnaces. Once shut, furnaces takes a few weeks to restart. This will eventually hit their margins in the April to June quarter.
It's a domino effect. If furnaces at giants like H&G or Borosil cool down,
The ripple is felt in your medicine cabinet in your pantry. From vaccine vials to beverage bottles, the glass industry is the silent backbone of the supply chain. Now, with commercial LPG prices up over 114 rupees per cylinder this week, the cost of shaping daily essentials is at risk. However, the glass industry is currently looking at green escape. It's accelerating the shift to electric boosting and hydrogen mixed fuels. But for now, the survival of India's glass giants depends on how quickly the sea lanes of the Gulf can be reopened.
Well, Iran's new leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, has delivered a message to the nation.
Well, in a message that it read out on Iran's state television, Mojtaba Khamenei has issued fresh warning to U.S. and Israel. And this is the first time he has publicly spoken after U.S. and Israel began war on Iran.
Mojtaba Khamenei has said that Iran will not refrain from avenging the blood of its martyrs. Well, he also added that all U.S. bases should immediately be closed in the region or attacks will inevitably continue. Mojtaba Khamenei said that closure of the Strait of Hormuz should be continued as a tool to pressure United States.
Well, Mojtaba Khamenei is the son of late Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was assassinated by U.S. and Israel on the first day of the war. President Masoud Pezeshkian's son earlier claimed that Mojtaba sustained some injuries in the ongoing war, but remains in good health.
Now, the new Ayatollah has also activated his account on X, where he is identifying as revolution's leader, and not the title of supreme leader that has been officially ascribed to him.
Well, the message from Mojtaba Khamenei contradicts earlier statement made by President Masoud Pezeshkian, who issued an apology for conducting strikes on Gulf countries.
However, Iran's Secretary of Supreme National Council, Ali Larijani, and Parliament Speaker, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, have continuously maintained that attacks on U.S. bases in Gulf and blockade of the Strait of Hormuz will continue.
Well, U.S. bases, airports, oil facilities, and vessels in the Gulf waters, Iran's retaliation has dragged the entire region into the line of fire.
And in the last few days, the focus of global powers has shifted to the Strait of Hormuz, where attacks are being carried out on commercial shipping vessels. Well, hours after Iran's new leader, Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei, said the Strait of Hormuz will remain closed, Iran's deputy foreign minister has issued a statement saying vessels of some countries will be allowed to pass.
Well, since the beginning of the war, Iran has carried out multiple attacks on shipping vessels in Strait of Hormuz. And out of these, 3 vessels carried Indian sailors.
The latest attack happened on Safe Sea Vishnu. There were 16 Indian sailors aboard the U.S.-flagged oil vessel when it was attacked near Khor al-Zubair port in Iraq. 15 of the 16 Indian sailors have been rescued, while 1 is confirmed dead. The next shipping vessel that had Indian crew was MKD WION, a Marshall Islands flagged vessel which was attacked in the Gulf of Oman. 16 Indian sailors were rescued while 1 was confirmed dead. Third U.S. vessel was attacked in Musandam Peninsula. The Palau flagged oil tanker Skylight has 9 Indian crew members aboard.
Well, the number of Indian-flagged vessels operating in Persian Gulf is 28, and out of these, 24 vessels are located west of the Strait of Hormuz with 677 Indian sailors. The remaining 4 vessels are on the eastern part of the strait with 101 Indian sailors aboard.
Now, despite tensions, a Liberian-flagged ship with crude oil from a Saudi port, it had arrived at the port of Mumbai near the Strait of Hormuz. New visuals show the tanker Shenlong Suezmax at the Indian port. The ship had departed from the Saudi port Ras Tanura on March 1st.
Earlier, the official spokesperson of India's Foreign Ministry, Randeep Jaiswal, had confirmed the death of 3 Indian sailors, and he said that search for 1 missing sailor was underway.
Add a little more to that, as he said that we've lost so far 3 Indian nationals. And the 4th Indian national is missing. All these 4 nationals were part of crew on board merchant ships plying in the area.
The war in West Asia has killed thousands of people across countries, damaged infrastructure worth billions, and triggered a fuel crisis being felt across the world.
Well, but the gamification of this war by the U.S. after it launched the first strike has come under heavy criticism. Of course, the White House posted a video on its X account with the caption, "Undefeated." The video is a mix of visuals from games, which quickly transition to footage of American forces striking targets in Iran.
The White House post on social media comes hours after U.S. President Donald Trump remarked on American military striking and sinking Iranian warships and vessels. Trump, while speaking, said that the decision to sink instead of capturing ships is because the official said it was more fun. Listen in.
In fact, I got a little upset with our people. I said, "What quality of ship? Excellent, sir. Top of the line." I said, "Why didn't we just capture the ship? We could have used it. Why did we sink them?" They said, "It's more fun to sink them." I said, they like sinking them better. They say it's safer to sink them. I guess it's probably true.
The targeted ships also include Iris Dina, an Iranian naval frigate that U.S. torpedoed while it was in international waters near Sri Lanka. The ship was returning from an event in India with over 100 on board. Sri Lankan authorities answered a distress call and rescued more than 39 sailors. They also recovered the bodies of 87 others.
But this is not the first time that the White House has gamified war and rhetoric around it. In an earlier post, White House posted a montage of several Hollywood action films with the caption, "Justice the American Way."
Well, that post from March 6th got a harsh response from Hollywood actor Ben Stiller, who slammed the Trump administration for making light of war and using footage from his film. Now, Steele said in his post, and I'm quoting, "We never gave you permission and have no interest in being part of your propaganda machine. War is not a movie." Well, U.S. President Donald Trump is calling on the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates.
But markets are betting against it as the Iran war sends oil and inflation pressures higher. Well, with crude oil prices surging again amid escalating conflict in West Asia, markets are bracing for rising inflation. The Iran-led chokehold on the Strait of Hormuz, which is a shipping lane that handles roughly 1/5 of the world's oil, has pushed U.S. crude to about $95 a barrel. Higher energy costs are expected to flow through to gasoline, food and transport prices as well, pressuring consumers and businesses alike.
Well, President Trump took to social media saying the Federal Reserve should be dropping interest rates immediately, aiming to support growth and borrowing costs.
But investors are moving in the opposite direction. Before the Iran conflict began, markets were pricing in 2 quarter-point rate cuts by year-end. Now they are barely pricing in one cut, if any, at all.
Well, part of that debate includes the Fed's leadership. Trump has selected former Fed Governor Kevin Warsh to succeed Jerome Powell as Fed chair this May. And Warsh is seen as more rate cut friendly. But even with a likely leadership change, inflationary pressures from rising energy costs are counteracting expectations of looser policy.
Now, one major Wall Street bank, Goldman Sachs, now forecasts that the U.S. personal consumption expenditures inflation rate rising to 2.9% by year-end. This is above the Fed's 2% target. They also delayed their predicted timing for a rate cut from June to September, reflecting the risk that inflation remains elevated for longer due to geopolitical disruptions.
While the ongoing tension has broader market effects, the bond markets have slashed rate cut expectations. The safe haven currencies like the U.S. dollar have strengthened, and stocks and risk assets remain volatile as traders reassess economic growth, inflation, and central bank response.
We have some breaking news coming in. Iranian media reports several explosions in Tehran, and this after the Israeli military said it launched a new wave of strikes in Tehran, pressing ahead with its campaign against Iran for a 14th day.
Now, the military had said earlier that the IDF had begun a wide-scale wave of strikes targeting infrastructure of the Iranian regime across Tehran. Well, on Thursday, Israel's military said it struck checkpoints set up in Tehran by the besieged paramilitary force of Iran's Revolutionary Guard as part of efforts to undermine control by the authorities. Now, this is Breaking news coming in. Of course, earlier, Israel had warned of these attacks from Iran, and now Israeli military has said that it has launched a new wave of strikes in Tehran, pressing ahead with its campaign against Iran for now the 14th day. The military earlier had said that the IDF had begun a wide-scale wave of strikes there, targeting infrastructure of the Iranian regime across Tehran. On Thursday, Israel's military said that it struck checkpoints set up in Tehran by the besieged paramilitary force of Iran's Revolutionary Guards. Well, U.S. President Donald Trump has advised the Iranian team not to participate in the upcoming FIFA World Cup,
saying it is for their own life and safety. Well, this comes just 2 days after he told FIFA President Gianni Infantino that Iranian players would be welcome, and this is despite the ongoing war in West Asia.
Well, taking to social media platform Truth Social, Trump said, I'm quoting, "The Iran national soccer team is welcome to the World Cup, but I really don't believe it is appropriate that they be there for their own life and safety."
Now, Trump's latest remarks comes just a day after Iran's sports minister, Ahmad Toniamali, said that Iran would not take part in the tournament following the US-Israeli attacks that killed the country's supreme leader.
Now, the 48-team FIFA World Cup will be held in United States, Canada, and Mexico from June 11th to July 19th. Iran is scheduled to play all their group matches in the United States, and they are set to face New Zealand and Belgium in Los Angeles on June 15th and June 21st, before taking on Egypt in Seattle on June 26th.
Iran's withdrawal from the World Cup would be unprecedented in the modern era. No country has pulled out of the tournament after the draw since France and India did that, and by not taking part in 1950, citing travel costs.
Now, if Iran withdraws, the most likely replacement could be Iraq, the highest-ranked Asian team that failed to qualify. However, Iraq is already scheduled to play a playoff match in Mexico on 31st of March against Suriname or Bolivia for the final World Cup spot. But the airspace closures and visa issues, Iraq may struggle to travel to Mexico.
Now, if FIFA award Iran's place to Iraq, that issue would be resolved, but it would create another problem. The playoff spot would need a replacement based on Asian qualifying standings. The most likely candidate would be the UAE, although they too could face travel difficulties. Alternatively, FIFA could leave the playoffs unchanged and award Iran's spot to Italy instead. Currently ranked 13 in the world, the four-time world champions still need to win a 4-team UEFA playoff to qualify for the World Cup. Well, just a week before the release of the second part, B62 Studios have announced the worldwide theatrical re-release of Dhurandhar Part 1.
Well, starting March 13, 2026, the 2025 hit will return to nearly 500 screens globally, with 250 screens allocated to the Indian market and another 250 screens overseas. In North America, specifically, the film is set to occupy roughly 185 screens. And this is a rare feat for a Bollywood re-release. The original film, directed by Aditya and starring Ranveer Singh as a spy, became a cinematic phenomenon upon its initial release in December 2025. It earned a staggering 1,305.35 crore rupees at the global box office. That is approximately $155 million.
Now, in India, it made history by becoming the first Bollywood film to cross the 1,000 crore rupees mark. That is $119 million gross mark within a short span of time, cementing its status as the highest-grossing Hindi film of all time. This re-release serves as a high-octane refresher for fans before Dhurandhar. The revenge continues in theatres on March 19, 2026. Now, the sequel is already showing signs of another record-breaking run, with North American advance bookings having already crossed $2.5 million. In India, pre-sales for special paid previews on March 18th have already grossed over 19 crore, that is $2.2 million. The sequel will be expanding into 5 Indian languages: Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam and Kannada.
All right, with that, we call a wrap to World Day for today. But don't go anywhere. News and updates will follow on the other side of this very short break. Keep watching WION. World is Fun.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
Problem with NATO is that
In an ever-changing, fast-paced world, identifying the pulse of global happenings is important. Because it is the pulse that truly measures the real nature of world events. It monitors the shifting geopolitical landscapes and anticipates what lies ahead. At WION World Pulse 2026, we tap into the heartbeat of events that matter to you and to the world. 7 pulsating themes, 100 plus thought leaders, 1 dynamic platform, WION World Pulse. The rhythm of the new world order.
It's about the support that those terrorist groups.
LTT has been wiped out. Afghanistan would expect India.
This Hafiz Saeed issue.
Deepest disappointment and concern. दुनिया पहले 2 कैंप में 2 खेमे में.
Müslüman düşmanlığı yapmaya başladı.
To political activists.
So long as my country.
From the conversations that mattered to capturing the pulse for the future. India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one